Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics on Random. Berto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being here. Welcome aboard, everybody that's already here. Bruce Pollard is in the house. Dublin, Washington is in the house. Michael Rudnin is in the house. Star Foster Alexander is in the house. And of course, there's Norman Reynolds and AVQ. AVQ, I'm not going to mess with your name today. And Lee Grant. Folks, we got a show that's real packed today. So I'm going to go ahead and get with it right away as soon as I can pull it up on my screen. Here we go. Title of the show today, White Father, Black Son discuss their American experience, but before, Tulsa, bad policing. Patrick and Delvon Carolan, father and son, discuss their real American experience. We talk policing and Trump's administration irresponsibility. The American experience is difficult for many. Until all Americans can live the American dream, there will be chaos in this country. And it goes and it comes, but there will be chaos in this country until we all realize we are, in fact, from the same cloth, until we realize that we are all should have the same access to success. We're not looking for equal outcomes. That depends on the individual. But we all want to make sure we have equal access to success. Anyhow, without further ado, I want to get into the policing thing first because Joanne Reed did a piece on MSNBC that really touched me because it shows it bugs me many times that people don't have enough empathy to see these things, that they cannot see what is right in front of them, the way different people are treated, etc., what gets promotion, all that good stuff. Welcome aboard, Mim, Golub, Scallon, and Phil Robson. So I want you to check this out. I think I queued it up. I was barely right on time, but I'm here. So let's check that out. I want you to take a look at that, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Right now, I'm too nervous to take a meal from McDonald's because I can't see it being made. I don't know what's going on with people nowadays, but please, just give us a break.
Here is a tale of fast food and policing. That video of a weepy police officer crying in frustration over not receiving the correct breakfast order at a McDonald's drive-thru went viral today, with law enforcement boosters saying it showed how unappreciated and frightened police officers feel these days, with mean protesters marching and yelling about police killings of black people for the third straight week worldwide. But needless to say, there are worse things that can happen in a fast food parking lot than not getting your Egg McMuffin, like falling asleep in your car while black and getting shot in the back by police when they arrive because you ran after a 46-minute interrogation, as happened to Rayshard Brooks. Like the eerie stills of that former officer killing George Floyd, this image shown at the press conference today by Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard, showing the officer who shot Mr. Brooks kick his body while he lay dying on the ground after reportedly uttering, "I got him," while a second officer stood on the dying man, will live in infamy in the story of American policing. It is the visual proof of what black people have been crying out is the dehumanizing attitude toward our lives and toward our bodies that too many officers, mostly white, walk around with while armed with a gun and a license to kill. So, officer lady, excuse us if we find it hard to view your faulty breakfast as a crisis. And perhaps if you're that easily freaked out, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to carry a gun. Meanwhile, the fear our Officer Karen was articulating seems related to an ugly accusation made by a police union this week that fast food workers at a Shake Shack location actually poisoned a group of officers with bleach, which turned out to be completely untrue. But that dangerous libel on low-paid workers shows you what too often we are dealing with when it comes to law enforcement. The rush to judgment that low-wage people and non-white people are probably criminals. Meanwhile, today is the 5-year anniversary of the massacre of 9 black parishioners inside Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, a case in which we also were reminded of how differently interactions with law enforcement can go down if you're white, even if you're a multiple murderer. Because while Rayshard Brooks was executed in a Wendy's parking lot for daring to run away after being detained for no reason for nearly an hour and for taking a taser to try and free himself from officers he clearly had every reason to fear, Dylan Roof, who again had already gun massacred 9 people in Charleston, the racist who glorified apartheid-era South Africa, he was not just detained peacefully. He was fed a nice Burger King lunch by the arresting officers, which makes what South Carolina Senator Tim Scott said today, even after acknowledging the grim anniversary at a press conference announcing whatever that was, because it's not reform, so ahistoric and so strange.
I don't know how to tell people that the nation is not racist. I'll try again. We're not a racist country.
That guys like Scott from South Carolina and guys like our Secretary of, in fact, I didn't cue this one, but I really should have queued it up. I think some of the most dangerous people is when you get black tokens out there that are trying to justify that America is not a racist country. They hold the entire country back. There is a certain amount of evil to those people who use themselves as tools to tell folks that in as much as you know there is an issue, there is a problem, that you refuse to acknowledge that. I went ahead and bring this in. I wanted to do this one a little bit better than I'm going to do it, but I'm going to put it as is right now. This is another person that I think is a danger to solving the real problem. As you guys know, race is a silly thing, but that's what we live in America. Check this one out.
You know, we've reached a point in our society where we dissect everything and try to ascribe some nefarious notion to it. We really need to move away from that. We need to move away from being offended by everything, of going through history and looking at everything, you know, of renaming everything. I mean, think about the fact that some of our universities, some of our prestigious universities, have a relationship with the slave trade. Should we go and rename those universities? You know, it really gets to a point of being ridiculous after a while, and, you know, we're going to have to grow up as a society.
Let's pick up right where I left off with Dr. Carson right there. He says we have to grow up.
I think that is a fairly infantile response, actually, to say that words don't have meanings, that dates don't have meanings, that dates don't have power. But this is from the administration that on the 4th anniversary of murders of the LGBTQ community stripped away health protections for that community. This is the same person who had to be convinced that having a rally that would necessarily and has traditionally attracted people who do not care about Black lives, that they were going to have this rally in Tulsa at the site of a Black massacre, and it took a week of cajoling to make him move. And so let's be very clear. This isn't about growing up. It's about taking responsibility and having accountability for the actions that have been taken by this country and by people acting on behalf of this country. And we do have a day of reckoning, and that day of reckoning is going to continue until we actually make change.
That's why, I mean, our women, I tell you, are really on point on this issue, notwithstanding somebody like Candace Owens. Anyhow, I want to play another piece here. You know, Trump is going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I want all of you who are thinking about going to Tulsa, all of you remember that Trump doesn't care a hoot about you. All Trump wants to make sure is the following. To my brothers and sisters who love Trump, you know I love you, but guess who does not love you? Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants you to risk your life to go to his rallies, but he wants you to sign a waiver that says, oh my God, if you get sick by coming out to my rallies and you pick up the coronavirus, you're on your own. You can't go ahead and sue me. But at the same time, as the president of the United States, you think he would give you good health care so that even if you get sick, you can go to the doctor and get taken care of? Forget that. Check this out, folks. Check this out.
Some news about a Trump rally next month. Trump demanding that people sign a waiver before attending that rally, admitting that they might get coronavirus. Trump demanding that people sign a waiver before attending that rally, admitting that they might get coronavirus, and agreeing not to hold the Trump campaign responsible if they do get it. And agreeing not to hold the Trump campaign responsible if they do get it.
Are you game? So are you game? Do you really want to go through that? I don't think so. So folks, remember, this is the same guy who says the following. He says the following. I heard our president said something and I had to give a double take. Check this out and tell me what you think.
Our testing is so far advanced, it's so much bigger and better than any other country that we're going to have more cases. We're always going to have more cases. And as I said this morning, that's probably the downside of having good testing.
Oops, I messed that one up. Let's go back again. I heard our president said something and I had to give a double take. Check this out and tell me what you think.
Our testing is so far advanced, it's so much bigger and better than any other country that we're going to have more cases. We're always going to have more cases. And as I said this morning, that's probably the downside of having good testing, is you find a lot of cases that other countries who don't even test don't have. If you don't test, you don't have any cases. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any. Don't have. If you don't test, you don't have any cases. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any.
Yes, he said that. Yes, he said that. Okay, caller on the phone. Let's see. We would only have a short time for calls. Come on in, caller 828. Come on in.
Hi, Egberto.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Hope in North Carolina. How are you?
Hope, how are you doing, Hope?
I'm doing good. Hey, yeah, I think that the president's pants are on fire.
Talk to me, my friend. Talk to me.
Hey, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina originally, and the Calhoun Monument is coming down. Do you know who John C. Calhoun was?
I know the name. Remind me again, though. I know. Tell me about it.
Well, he was in the House of Representatives in South Carolina, and he had kind of a long, distinguished, at the time at least, public service career. Mm-hmm. And he died in about 1850. He was actually a vice president of the United States, and there's a very, very significant monument to him in Charleston. But the thing about Calhoun was, he played quite a prominent position in South Carolina, and he was not exactly an ardent abolitionist, if you get my drift.
Yes,
I mean, he was a real proliferator of slavery. And his monument, he died in 1850, like I may or may not have said, but there was a huge reaction to this monument when it was placed right before the turn of the century, because it was just really widely known that Calhoun was one of those people that kind of led South Carolina to secede from the Union, and that he was just very much in support of slavery. And there's a very famous 1837 speech in which John C. Calhoun just gets right to the point and made a statement that people of black and brown color were inferior in many areas, including their mental capacity. And, they've tried to take that monument down for years, all right, because it's been causing issues since the day that it was put up. But I wanted to kind of call your attention to the story because I just couldn't be more proud of Mayor John Tecklenburg and the council.
I am.
It's real hard. It's hard to do stuff like that in preservationist communities like Charleston.
Right.
But that's a big, big, big story. And I think it represents, we're seeing all kinds of things with the Black Lives Matter movement, and things really do feel very different now to me. And the fact that this is happening in Charleston is just a great thing.
Well, you just got yourself on a blog. You just got this snippet on a blog that's going to be posted, because this is something that I think America needs to hear, that in fact the protests are working. In fact, you got to keep the pressure on. Thank you so kindly, Hope, for calling in and letting us know that. And I'm going to go ahead and write that thing, and it's all direct. Hey, do me a favor. Drop me a line directly and give me your full name. And why don't you send me a snapshot so that I can put that aside with the blog?
Well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to send you a little write-up so that you've got the facts about it, because I've kind of been blogging about it myself. And the other thing I want your listeners to know, I'll send you this link as well. There is a Black Lives Matter virtual channel in honor of Juneteenth, where you can go online now and you can look at interviews with the Black Lives Matter leadership and support them. And I've been playing some of it occasionally when I have time to look at it. And the marches are wonderful. And the people, both young and older people who are a part of this movement are incredibly impressive. They are incredibly generous and intelligent and impressive. And so I just want to let you know about that, and I'll send you the link.
You have my email, right? Go ahead and send it to, please, info@politicsdoneright.com. Or if you have my direct email, you can send that as well, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you so much for what
Hope.
you do.
Thank you very much for giving us that info. I needed to hear that. You've made my day.
Thanks, Egberto. Bye-bye.
Have a good one now. Bye-bye. All right, folks, we had another piece to play, but because Hope had all that great information, I think that was better than the piece. The other piece just said that Amy Klobuchar decided to say she's out of the contention for vice presidential candidate, and she wanted a woman of color. She hoped that that Biden picked a woman of color, to which I said, I am tired of symbolic gestures. I want a woman who is going to go in the office with progressive values, and if that happens to be a woman of color, fine. But but you know something, I want progressive values a la Elizabeth Warren's policies that have been written out and stated. These are the policies we want. Symbolism means nothing. Having a black person in a White House with a ghetto, a barrio, and Appalachia in bad shape has no meaning other than symbols. We want true progressive values that builds people up. So I don't want, I would love to see a black woman, a Latina woman, an Asian woman. I would love to see that in the White House. But right now, what we want is not appeasers. We want people in that White House that means business. And I've got to get to the show of the day with El Señor Patrick and Delvon Carolan. Here we go. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm here with Patrick Carolan, who is currently the Director of Catholic Outreach for Vote Common Good and former Franciscan Action Network Director, I believe. Was that right?
Executive Director.
Executive Director.
Yes, don't forget
that.
But
he had to leave that because he wanted to get into politics to take care of business. And I'm here with his son, Delvon Carolan. Delvon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I am doing excellent. I interviewed Patrick. I interviewed you a few months ago, and it was a great interview. I learned a whole lot, and here we are again, especially in these times. First of all, Patrick, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm son of immigrants. My parents came over to America in 1950 from Ireland. They were dirt poor Irish Catholics. I grew up in a very poor Irish Catholic neighborhood in Connecticut that was in transition. So it started out as an Irish Catholic neighborhood and ended up as a predominantly black neighborhood. And went through school and kind of really thought I really understood racism because a lot of my friends were black. When I got into college, I started doing union organizing. I became president of a large state employee union in Connecticut in the 80s and 90s. I gave all that up after a while, became a stay-at-home dad. My wife and I became foster parents. We took in a number of children, and then we ended up adopting Delvon and his sister Brianna. We took him in first as foster parents, and I think this was around, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it was around 2008 or 2009, Delvon, is that right? Do you remember?
I think it was earlier than that. Hold
Okay.
on. Are you saying the adoption day or the
Well,
day?
when you first came to live with us as foster children.
Oh man, you
Well,
might be right.
You were 10, so you know
Yeah,
you
whatever
were.
the math that is.
Yeah.
Don't make me do math.
So it's around 2008. Delvon and Brianna came to live with us, and then a couple of years later, we adopted them. And we have 2 other children, 2 biological children. So I have 2 white children and 2 black children. And one of the things I began to notice was having to parent my black children a little differently than my white children. I never had to give the talk to my white children, but I had to give it to my black children. Although I did give it to my white children because of that. But I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute too. I went on to then move to DC and become the executive director of the Franciscan Action Network, which is a social justice organization, works on issues like immigration reform and climate justice and racism, things like that. While I was there, I founded the Global Catholic Climate Movement and the Faithful Democracy Coalition. And I did that up until I was, till this January. And then in this January, I just felt that we need change. You know, it's one thing to talk about changing policies and working to change policies, but we're never going to change policies until we change policy makers. So I had to move from a 501c3 to a 501c4 so I could really work to change policies.
And vote common good, that is your answer to actually get the right people in office that are going to do the right things.
Well, it's, you know, one of it, Vote Common Good's focus is reaching out to mostly white evangelical and white Catholics. If you look at the numbers, you know, people will talk about how terrible it is that 81% of white evangelicals voted for Trump in 2016. Right now, the numbers are at about 70%. Well, Trump can't win the election if he only gets 70% of white evangelicals.
Right.
And it's the same thing in white Catholics. I think it was about 62% of white Catholics voted for Trump in 2016. And right now, the polls show that number to be at about 50%. He's not winning the election. You take a state like Michigan, which is a very Catholic state, Trump won by 9,000 votes. We can easily get 9,000 white Catholics to reconsider who they voted for and vote for Joe Biden. I mean, especially Joe Biden because he's white Catholic, and make a difference and change the election. So, you know, we're kind of niche-y in that regard, that we're focusing. People ask us, well, why are you just focusing on white evangelicals and white Catholics? And, you know, it's because nobody else is focusing on them. There's lots of people working with other groups.
Right.
Where we can make a difference by just getting 5 to 7% of those folks to switch.
That is important. A lot of people don't realize that you have to work all angles. It's not enough to work one angle. But anyway, Delvon, let's start with you. You're a foster kid with Patrick. What was it like to you, a black kid just immersed in I can't say a white community, because Patrick said he lived in a black community, but with a white father?
Well, when we adopted Delvon and Brianna, it was mostly a white community at that point.
Oh, it was a white community.
Oh yeah, I grew up in a community that was more black than white, but this community we were living in was, you know, it's racially mixed, but
right.
But it was not a black community.
So Delvon, what was it like? Was it sort of being immersed in that right away?
I guess it was initially, I was more or less innocent to, you know, just being thrown into it. I just kind of took it as what it was. You know, I'm going to go live with this family and they're a good family. So initially, you know, I just, you know, saw it for what it was, family. You know, I don't think I initially saw too much color until I guess other people introduced it to me.
Look, that's a very important concept, Delvon. That is very important. You saw Patrick as my dad. This is a guy who is taking care of me. And not until people showed that difference did you have to look and say, oh my God, there's some difference between me and my dad, between me and my white brother and sister. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It took a while. People would ask me, why is your dad, you know, white, and, you know, why is your mom white? And I guess I didn't really ask that question initially. You know, I've seen it as, you know, like they were loving, and it was a good place to be. And it, you know, it was going to be my, you know, forever home, you know?
No, let me tell you a funny story about that. So one day Delvon and I were walking down the street, and I think he was probably 10 at the time. And this person that I knew was walking, who I knew from my church and stuff. And we talked at our church that we were adopting these two children. And so he came up to me and he said, "Oh, is this your son that you're adopting?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Delvon. We're in the process of adopting him." And when he walked away, Delvon turned to me and he said, "Don't tell people I'm adopted." And I said, "Well, okay, they're going to notice a difference. What do you want me to tell them?" And he said, "Just tell them that I'm your son." And so, from Delvon's perspective, I think that's how he saw it, was that I was his son, and, we don't need to go into a whole lot of other details.
But you know what? You know what is so interesting about that? Go ahead, Delvon.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Oh, yeah. What is so interesting about that is, you hear all these things. I don't know if you saw my newsletter today, but my newsletter today had an issue where I said, kind of implied that all this stuff is learned. Racism is learned. All these isms are actually learned. And, I think Delvon is a microcosm of that in saying two things. Don't call me your adopted son. I'm your son, but son, they're going to see the difference, and they're going to ask that question, son. So, Delvon, now, when did you kind of see that? I don't want to call it a problem, but yes, when did you see a problem arise in your life with this?
I guess it was mostly other people's problem,
I love that answer. I love that.
Because again, like I said, my family was my family. So I guess the first time I really initially seen it, and I wouldn't say that it was vicious in any way, but I think I was around 11 or 12 years old going shopping with my mom. And, we're in line at this clothing store, and, it comes up to me and my mom, and the lady asked if we were together or not. And, me being 12, I'm like, who else am I with?
So somebody else came and pointed out a difference to you. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, the cashier had pointed it out, and it happened numerous times. Be shopping for clothes, or I would go grocery shopping with my mom every Sunday. So, I guess that really kind of brought it to the forefront for me.
Now, how did you feel about that then? Because you're only 12 years old, and people are starting to inflict these types of thoughts in your head, things that in your innocence wasn't there before.
I think that I thought that I could still play that these are my parents.
Right.
At that time, I'm like, why not still, So I guess it wasn't until people weren't necessarily believing me that they were my parents as I got older.
Right.
As I got older, and I could actually be in a line by myself, or go out to eat by myself, then it was more of a are you really with this person? Or
now, let me ask you something now. Culturally speaking, right? When you were in school with your friends, I imagine you had both black and white friends in school. Is that right?
So I went to a Catholic school that was mainly Caucasian. There was probably 4 to 3 black kids in my specific grade. And, I was friends with the one only other male black kid, yes.
Now, did you find that, because I imagine they had black parents, right?
Yes.
And did you find that there was any issues with the black kids per se?
How do you mean? Were there any issues with the black kids?
In other words, did you feel any different having white parents to your black friend who had black parents?
So, initially, not initially. So again, because I believe that we were in a setting with a lot of Caucasians. The kid at the time was, just kind of, he was used to it at that point. I don't think I really ran into, again, any issues with other African Americans about my parents until I was, older, junior high school, where, my parents would come in for parent-teacher conferences or something like that, and they're like, your parents are white,
I actually had a instance, and it didn't happen with Delvon, but it happened with his sister Brianna, where I was there for parent-teacher conference, and we were sort of, it was one of these things where you're waiting in line for your turn to go see the teacher, and the last parent went in, and I was waiting out in the hall to be called in, and then the teacher packed up all of her stuff and started leaving, and I said, "Excuse me, I'm Brianna's dad," and she said, "Oh, I didn't," and I could just, and she was very apologetic about it and everything, but she, didn't assume, or didn't even think that I could have been Brianna's dad.
Yeah, that is ironic, or well, not ironic, but that is interesting. Now, let me ask you this: right now, the country is going through racial strife. I know how you see it, Patrick, because again, we've spoken a whole lot. I am always interested to see, how does it appear to you through your eyes, Delvon?
What exactly?
Well, let me give a specific answer. Right now, the Black people feel that they are targeted by police officers. Through your eyes, do you see it that way as well?
Absolutely. And you can see it by the action as well. I don't think people would be out protesting 7 days out of the week for no reason.
Now, have you had any encounters yourself?
I have.
Explain.
The first time I've had encounters with the police, there's, 7-Eleven where I'm from, and it's in the central part of, the small town that I'm from. And that's where the kids would go and hang out, grab sodas, and hang out. And most of my friends when I was growing up were white. So there was a afternoon where we were there, and it was 4 or 5 of my friends in the back of my friend's pickup truck, drinking Mountain Dews, hanging out, waiting to, make another move to another location. And a police officer pulled in, blocked in his truck, and had us all get out of the truck. And the short end of the story was that I had gotten a ticket out of my 5 friends. I was the only one who was.
Yeah, you got a ticket for loitering or something, didn't you?
Yeah, I had
to go to court with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now why did the others not get one? If you got one, is that?
I asked the officer, and he refused to answer me. So.
Did you have any other occurrences or?
With the police?
Yes.
I was waiting for one of my friends in front of his house, and this is probably 2 miles outside of our neighborhood, which I wouldn't say was only white. It was predominantly white, but there were families that were of an ethnic background around us. But we were about 2 miles away from my house, about 2:30 in the afternoon, and the dead of winter, waiting for a buddy to come out of his house who was getting ready. And so as we're waiting, the time's going by, it's 5-10 minutes. And I'm looking at my phone, and I look up, and there's a police cruiser coming straight at my vehicle, head on, full speed. And so the police officer slams on his brakes right before he hits the front of my car and just throws his hands in the air. And I'm really confused. I have no idea what's going on. And all I hear out of, the left-hand side of my ear is, put your hands in the fucking air. And
no.
Yes, sir. And I turn to the side, and there's a pistol through the crack of my window. So it's right in my eye when I turn. And then I see 7-8 cops all to the left of me, and then another 5 to the right of me.
You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah, no, sir. So I stick my hands out the window, and, I hold it up, and I stick my head out, and I'm looking around, and one of the police officers says my name. He goes, "Delvon." I go, "Yes, yes, it's me." And then he goes, he's like this, and he goes, "Oh my God," and, drops his gun and, grabs his chest, and he tells the other officers, he's like, "I know him, I know his dad." And obviously the mood of it had, changed. Everyone put down their guns.
Wait, but first of all, why were they there? Did a neighbor call them or something?
Yeah, so they said that they had gotten a call that there were people sitting in the car waiting to break inside of somebody's house.
That is amazing. And they came out arms ablazing, 12 cops or 11 cops for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let me tell you why that is important.
If I'm not mistaken, Delvon, the cop who recognized you was a black cop, wasn't he?
No, it was.
It wasn't Larry.
Okay. It's Officer Carroll.
Okay.
Okay, but there are two things that I think we get out of this, right? Number one is the difference in policing that you got, but number two is that your dad just mentioned that one of the cops that were in the surrounds was actually a black cop as well, which just shows that this is an institutional issue with policing. Yes, black people get over police. Yes, black people get roughed up more, but it's not just by white police, it's by police, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, sir.
I also think that tell a story about what happened in Milford at the bike park that time.
Yeah, so I was in Milford, Connecticut, and I rode BMX, which is tricks on bikes.
I know it. I'm not that old.
There you go. And so what we commonly did was we would ride into surrounding towns and visit the skate parks and check out some of the street locations that we may have heard about, and or just pedal around and see what we can't find. But Milford was just one town over, so it was one of our regular riding spots. And I think they had a parade that day, and me and my friends were riding around, and we noticed that this kid was getting bullied physically by a group of other kids. And so, we decided to intervene. And so when I stepped in to intervene, and stepped between the kid, the smaller kid and the bigger kid, and the bigger kid, started running at his mouth. And, I told him, hey, you can't pick on this kid. Obviously he doesn't want to fight you. He doesn't want to fight. Leave him alone, essentially. And the kid was, F you, you effing nigger. And, took a swing at me. And so we started tussling. And, we finally got pulled apart, and me and my friends went about our day and went to the skate park. And while I was at the skate park, probably after 10 or 15 minutes, one of my buddies from the same town came up and was like, hey, man, we heard that, these same kids that you got in an altercation with are on their way with more kids to this skate park. So, me and my friends took the hint and, started heading back, towards our side of town. So on our way back, three full cars worth of kids are, trying to run us off the road in their vehicles. As they're screaming, F you, nigger, and this and that. And, and so I'm trying to just pedal away and, just get to my side of town. But, I'm getting tired and I can't outrun a car on a bicycle. So eventually I was able to get inside of a convenience store and call the police. And the police showed up.
You called the police?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay.
Did the owner of the store call the police?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The owner of the store had called the police because I'm inside of his store with 4 of my friends with the bikes as well, and he wants to know what's going on. And so, I tell him what's really, I'm being chased. So, I believe more than one person called the police as well. But the police show up nonetheless, and are just, what are you doing here, kind of thing. Which, what did you do to these kids? Kind of making it seem like me and my friends were the problem.
And you got the license plates numbers.
Yeah, I had gotten the license plates number. I think 2 of the 3 cars.
Yeah.
And now, I think by that point they had called you, right?
They called me, and so I had to come over, and I'm talking to the police officer, and they had the license plate numbers, and I said to him, you have the license plate numbers. Have you called these in? And he said, I checked it. I know these families. They're good kids.
What?
And I said, so, you know, we went home, Delvon and I took Delvon home, and then I had a friend on the police force, the Milford Police Force, who was went to my church, and I think he was a lieutenant or a captain. I couldn't get through. I kept calling over there to file a complaint. I couldn't get through to anybody. And I finally talked to this guy, and he said, well, come in and, you know, bring your son in and we'll talk about it. And I asked him, I don't understand. I said, if this were 3 carloads of black kids chasing a white kid on a bicycle, you would have had 20 police cars out there. You would have been calling the police from the next town over. You would have surrounded these kids. You would have had them in handcuffs and in jail. But it's white kids, and you're telling me they're good kids. So there's, you know, and it's my son's fault. And they were blaming the whole incident on my son. They said, well, your son started a fight up at the skate park. And I said, well, that's irrelevant. Whether he started a fight or not, he didn't, but it's irrelevant. These kids were chasing him, yelling racial epithets at him while he's on his bicycle. The store owner told you this. He told you what happened and what he saw. And your response is, you know, these are good kids. So that's kind of, you know, gives you that whole perspective of
it is amazing because I'm going through with what's going on in the country right now. I've been doing a whole lot of writing on this police brutality and what police are doing to people of color, minorities, etc. And I get a whole lot of pushback, including from folks like Candace Owens saying things like, oh, it's not real, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay any attention to what she says.
Exactly, exactly. Here we have a black kid with a white father, and he sees, and he's going through this, or has gone through this as well. Now, Delvon, I imagine you don't really, you don't make, I mean, having a dad like yours, I mean, I don't imagine that messes too much with your psyche, does it?
How do you mean?
That's dangerous territory to go into.
It's dangerous territory? What I mean is, in speaking to your dad, right? I get the image that he's really all in. He leans into all these particular issues. That he went up to the police department and was your advocate. That he's been your advocate in doing a whole lot of these racial issues. That in general, I'll be blunt, a lot of good white people would actually be more silent on these issues. In other words, son, just don't go there again. Son, don't do that again. But instead, he was an advocate to try to change the system and say, hey, if it were X amount of white kids in a car, I mean, black kids in a car chasing you actually heard him say things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It challenges other white people and so it's almost like you're looking in the mirror, and it's, you know, in being told this, you know, it's important for him to do that, you know, and
right.
And so like he sees that, he knows he has to do that, because if he doesn't do it, you know, obviously no one else is, you know, or there's a limited amount of people who are, and I think by him doing that, it makes everyone take a second look at themselves, because I know every time he's done it, you could tell that these people really didn't believe, in fact, that they were being discriminated. They didn't believe it until he had told them, and then they stepped back, you know, and looked at themselves, and like, who knows if they believe it now, but that second look is worth something.
And you know, and that's what I'm talking about, because it has to be your dad, right? It has to be a white guy who challenges others that say, no, this is what's really happening, because otherwise it is like my white allies. I look at them and I tell them many times, it is you who have to do this, because when I do it, it is, well, I am the, you know, I'm the black guy with their preconceived notions. So I mean,
you're the angry black guy pulling the race card.
There you go. Exactly. And that's why that's important of white allies, white advocates, and that's why I like your dad.
Yeah, I like him too. I'm gonna keep him around.
Yeah, you can keep him around for a while.
Let me tell you another funny story about Delvon, and then I want to go into another story that happened. But you know, as you and I have talked in the past, I've gotten arrested a lot for nonviolent civil disobedience. And one of the times I got arrested, Delvon called me up and he said, Dad, all those times you were giving me that talk about how to, you know, deal with the police, did you not pay attention to it yourself?
All right. been
So
arrested
well,
more
why did
times
you
than I
pay
have.
Patrick, why didn't you pay attention, man? You're giving your son advice that you are not using?
That's right. You're telling me to do this so you don't get arrested, avoid this so you don't get arrested, and then you're getting arrested. So
Tell me your other story.
so this is what happened with Delvon at school, and I'll start it off, and then I'll let Delvon jump in because it's his story. But it's typical of. First of all, when Delvon was in high school, I'm pretty sure the principal had my number first on the speed dial because I spent a lot of time. I used to joke with Delvon and tell him I spent more time in high school when he was there than when I was in high school. So I got the call one Monday morning and saying, your son's in trouble. He's going to be suspended. You need to come in. So I called Delvon. I said, explain to me what happened here. And, go in, we'll talk about it. And he said, well, on Saturday, he was at the 7-Eleven that they hung out in, the same 7-Eleven. And one of their teachers pulled up, and he was there with a couple of his friends from the school, a couple of white kids. And one of his teachers pulled up, and they were, they're seniors in high school. They're kind of giving the guy a little bit of a hard time, saying, oh, you live in the area, we know where you live, and, joking around. And his three white friends actually started walking toward the teacher. Delvon stayed back. He actually did listen to me on stuff like that. So he stayed back and stayed sitting on the hood of his car while his three white friends went closer to him. So the teacher complained. So I go in, and we're sitting in this meeting. And it was Delvon and me, and I don't remember Delvon. There were about 10 other people there.
Yeah, it was the entire administrative staff.
Administration. It was the vice principal, the counselor, the teacher, the shop teacher, because it was a tech school, the shop teacher, 3 or 4 other people there. And we're sitting down, and the vice principal starts talking about how, he understands this incident happened on a Saturday, but we expect our students to respect their teachers, even on weekends, and this was inappropriate behavior. And I looked around the room and I said, okay, I understand that, and I try to teach my children to be respectful absolutely all the time. I just have one question for you. Where are the other kids and the other parents? And the vice principal said, well, what do you mean? And I said, he was with 3 of his friends who are white who go to this school. Where are they? And he turned to the teacher and he said, well, what about the other 3 kids? And the teacher said, I didn't feel threatened by them.
You have got to be kidding me.
No.
And Delvon, you didn't approach a teacher, the other 3 kids did.
Yeah, they had initially noticed him. I don't think I noticed him at all. And they were like, oh, there goes, so-and-so teacher. Let's go say hi. And knowing my track record at that school, I did not go up to that teacher. I was like, I knew better. I was like, I'm going to stay over here, guys, And then, like my dad said, they were giving him a hard time. Oh, what you doing around here? We never seen you around here, so-and-so. And they started walking, and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, he must live around here, something of that sort. And, and that was the comment in which got me in trouble, because they said that he took it as I was saying, I know where he lives and like to watch out.
You have got, and you are the only one.
So here's what happened after that. I turned to the vice principal and I said, okay, now we're going to have a different discussion. We're going to talk about racism. And he said, you're not insinuating that this was racist, are you? And I said, I'm not insinuating anything. I'm flat out stating that this teacher is a racist and that you're a racist if you don't recognize that he's a racist. And if
you said that?
Yeah. And if we're not going to do anything about that here, then I'm going to go home and I'm going to come back with my lawyer. And I also, I'm very good at name dropping, and I was good. I knew the state attorney general at the time, and I said, and I'll call George Jepson up, who's a friend of mine, and I'll bring him in, or I'll get somebody from the attorney general's office to come in, and then we'll talk about it there. And it changed the whole conversation to an extent. It didn't change.
Needed to change the conversation.
But they did nothing to the teacher. I mean, here's what happened with the teacher went to Delvon's 3 friends and told his 3 friends that Delvon gave them up and they're going to get in trouble now.
The teacher did that?
Yeah. He told his 3 friends that, Delvon gave you guys up, so you're going to, your parents are probably going to have to come in.
Oh my! That should be another offense against that teacher.
And that teacher wasn't, and they tried to convince me that this teacher isn't racist, and there was nothing racist about that. That's just how he felt. So it's that, And I don't, the teacher probably didn't believe he was racist. It's that whole idea of like, what happened in Central Park a couple of weeks ago with that woman calling the police on the black man.
Exactly.
That's what the problem is. The problem's not necessarily, I mean, what happened to George Floyd is horrific, but that's a symptom of the problem. The George Floyds are the symptoms of the problem. The problem is how embedded racism is into our whole culture, and white people don't recognize that at all and don't acknowledge that. And until we do that, until that happens, we're never going to change our system. It's why I think the whole idea of defund the police is such an important concept, because, from when I hear that, what I hear is that now we're going to, just close down and not have any police officers, but we're going to reimagine how we do policing in this country and revision how we do policing. And that's transformative, and not just, solve this one little symptom here, pass a law that says you can't use a chokehold anymore, which is important, but that's not going to change much. We need to have a whole new vision of policing in this country. And that's what defund the police is all about.
And that is so important, because a lot of people ask the question, I ask the question all the time. How comes all of these murders by police, usually the person killed always look the same? People say, oh, well, police kill more whites than blacks. Yes, but let's look at conditions and in what process it happens.
Yes. Well, and it was like that video that you shared the other day about the black kid and the white kid both getting in, tussling with the police, and the black kid got shot in the back and the white kid escaped in his in the police vehicle. And they never once threw his.
I want to tell you, Dr. Patrick Carolan, let me tell you, it took me quite a while to put those videos side by side and time them to show the tussle and to show the escape and to show the results of the cop. But
that was really good.
It is important that we see this, and I think having spoken to both you and Delvon is important, because it's a dynamic that people don't see, and that Devon lived in a hybrid family is so important that one can see. I mean, you lived with him, so you know all there is to know about Delvon. Hey, you reared Delvon. And Delvon, above and beyond that, goes out into what I call the real world, and has to live through the real world. And had you not been the kind of parent that you are, he would have been in for the shock of his life.
Well, and also I think about this, and Delvon and I have talked about this. I wonder if I had not been a white person, would some of if Delvon's father was black and went into that meeting at that high school and made the same comment, it probably would have been taken a whole lot different and not taken as seriously.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Again, it would have been angry black man pulling the race car.
Yes.
Yeah. It would have been
been shrugged off that way, and then no one would have thought any more about it.
Well, look, folks, in closing, I have two questions. I always ask this question of my guests. What did I not ask you, Delvon, that you want America to hear?
He wants America to hear what a wonderful, awesome dad he has. No,
but you know what, Patrick? Patrick, I wasn't speaking to you, Patrick. I love you, brother, but I was speaking to Delvon.
I know.
There's still time for change.
Hey, you know what? There's time for change, but we need change now. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah, it's not too late.
Patrick.
So other than that, I have an awesome son in Delvon. I think it's that, and particularly for white people that are watching, that, it's okay to say, I don't understand. It's good to acknowledge that you don't understand, What's not good is then to do nothing about it. And so once you realize that, I don't understand racism, I thought I did, but I don't, then it's incumbent upon you to read more about it, learn more about it, talk about it, listen to, your stuff, your shows, and other people, and talk to black people, listen to black people, find out how they feel about it. Not just, your token black friend and say, I'm not racist because look, I have these two black friends, but really, delve into that conversation and have a conversation with yourself about how you feel, your attitudes. What is that, what are your attitudes? When you walk down the street and you see a group of young black men standing on a corner, do you cross over to the other side of the street? Do you feel fear when you see that? Things like that you can then adjust. It's okay to do that. It's not okay to ignore it. Apathy is the worst sin you can commit, because ignoring it's never going to bring about change. We all have issues about race that we have to deal with. let's deal with them together.
And with that, Patrick, I want to add one corollary because I wrote a first-person piece a few days ago with my own prejudices. In this case, it's had to do with homosexuality, and I went ahead and spoke how I overcame my prejudice first in the mind and then in the heart. And I think that's just a different way of expressing what you just said. We acknowledge that we're human. We have problems. Now let's just individually solve it on the inside, and then we'll have a better world.
Yeah, and if you read the book by Ibram Kendi, Act Up Against Racism, he does the exact same thing. He talks about his own prejudice and how he was able to overcome that. So it's just something we have to do.
Patrick,
and then we have to turn the world over to people like Delvon to make it a
absolutely.
better world.
Patrick, Carolan, Delvon, Carolan, it's been my pleasure, and I mean my pleasure, having both of you on Politics Done Right. You've been both very informative. Thank you so kindly. I love that guy, Patrick. If that is an ally that you want. I mean, this guy is confrontational where he needs to be. He's practical where he needs to be. He just knows how to be an ally, a real ally, that is. Anyhow, folks, we're running out of time. I really don't have time to catch up on the feed today because we are out of time. Anyhow, one quick thing, please remember to support Politics Done Right. To support Politics Done Right, all you need to do is go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Very inexpensive to support positive affirmations, stuff that's moving us forward. Patreon.com. patreon.com, and I'm going to go ahead and put those links into the feed right now. The program does need your support. We need to get. I put out a thing there saying that we want to get a thousand subscribers so that we can get a producer and we can get a copy editor. Because 16 hours a day, it's sort of hard, especially at my age. But anyhow, the other thing is you can contribute as well at paypal.me/politicsdoneright, paypal.me/politicsdoneright. And again, you can purchase our books and our T-shirts and our cups and all of that at our store, store.politicsdoneright.com. store.politicsdoneright.com. I want to thank all of you. Actually, you know what? I need to be more respectful of my great listeners. Let me just see if there are other people. I'm going to just go through the list and call people's name out before I check out because I always like to do that. Michael Rudnin, welcome aboard. AVQ. We also have Norman Reynolds. We have Nick Hunter. Welcome aboard. Let's see. If I miss you, forgive me. Lee Grant, Lawrence Sims, Bruce Pollard, Star Foster Alexander, May Wood, The Black Light. Let's see. If I miss you, forgive me. Mim Kalub-Skalin, Phil Robson. I think I got Norman already. And I think that's everybody. Devlin Washington. Thank you guys for being here. Be here on Monday when we continue fighting the fight that's going to make us all have equal access to success. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I close this baby. I am what? Out. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.